Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. The Pony Express is ingrained in Western history. It shows up in film and literature and history books. Yet no one in modern times has ever followed its 2,000 miles from Missouri to California. Until now, Will Grant did just that, and he did it horseback. He joins Russell now to talk about his 142-day journey and his new book, The Last Ride of the Pony Express.
Morning, Alan. How are you?
Good morning again. Always nice to be here at the ranch. Makes me feel more at home every time I come here.
Well, you're definitely always welcome and at home. So, in the dude ranch business, some of us do pack trips. I've been around lots of people who've done them. They all have horror stories. It's one after another. You do any packing over the years?
Yeah, those were always the highlight of my, of life. I'd build toward those and then enjoy them. So yes, packing is a lot of fun. I was thinking this morning about one story I might lead off with.
Well, we're waiting.
And out. Well, we were up in Colorado, above the timberline in Colorado, packing, and so we got in a lightning storm up there, and riding along, no trees, no place to hide, no place to get out of it, storm and lightning, and we'd already heard that this particular kind of pass between two mountaintops was a lot of people have been killed there with lightning, and so riding along with that story on our shoulders and in a lightning storm will make you kind of pucker up a little bit.
Well, it's a weird parallel. We leased our horses years ago, probably 40 years ago now, to a dude range called Awe Wilderness, which was only accessible by horseback or the Durango-Silverton Railroad. And we had two wranglers up there, and my girlfriend and I had gone up there to ride, and these three women are riding, taking us to this alpine lake up, God knows, above tree line. And we got to see this alpine lake, and we're riding up this steep trail, and I looked over, and there's a big cross on the side of the hill. And I said, "What's that cross over there for?" And they said, "Oh, lightning struck this string of horses and killed 3 riders and 6 horses once years ago, and they put this big giant cross up there." So with that in the back of my mind, we get above tree line, and the hail and the lightning crashes, and I am sucked down on top of my saddle horn as low as I could get, hoping that somebody else was taller than me, because there wasn't, like you said, there wasn't a tree. There was just some sagebrush. And these 3 girls are laughing, and I'm sweating bullets because I come from Tucson, and lightning's dangerous, and I don't get it. And they think it's funny, and they think it's funnier because I'm scared because I don't like lightning. And finally the storm broke. We all survived. No second cross on the hill. And we saw the alpine lake. It was pretty, but it wasn't worth it. I would have turned around. But so we have a similar story, but
well, you get in one of those situations and there's nothing you can do. You just grit your teeth and go. But it makes you wonder what brought you there.
Well, I'll tell you, pack trips. Anyway, our trips are short. That wasn't even a pack trip. It was just a scenic tour. But imagine going 142 days and covering 2,000 miles. And Will Grant is with us. He took that trip. He was born and raised outside Denver, Colorado. I was born in Denver. After Colorado, he worked as a cowboy and horse trainer in Colorado and Wyoming and Texas. Good places to do that, and where he apprenticed under the legendary horseman Jack Brainerd. And in 2008, he pivoted to a career in journalism. His writing has appeared in Outside Magazine, Bloomberg, Businessweek, as well as regional publications throughout the West. His efforts to combine horses and storytelling have included a 600-mile horse race across Mongolia, an expedition to, we had Mongolian horse folks here one time at White Stallion, interesting folks. So he did a 600-mile horse race across Mongolia, expedition to find gold in Arizona. Probably didn't find it or he wouldn't be talking to us. Two trips to Kyrgyzstan, he'll have to correct us, and to play the most dangerous horseback game on the planet, Boru, he'll have to correct that too. The Last Ride of the Pony Express, My 2,000-Mile Horseback Journey into the Old West, is his first book. Lynn, our literary expert, says it's a brilliantly written book, and Will Grant joins us from his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Welcome, Will.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to talk to you all this morning.
Well, can you correct my bad pronunciation, the two trips to, how do you say that country?
Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan, I should have known that. And the name of the most dangerous horseback game?
The game is called Kok Boru.
Why didn't we know that?
It means blue wolf in the Kyrgyz language, and you guys should look it up. It's a pretty wild deal. It's certainly fun.
Have you participated some?
Yeah, for sure. I have participated in 2018 at the World Nomad Games. I was on the U.S. team for Kok Boru. And then we went back in March of 2022 to play again.
Can you describe it for us?
Sure. It's there's 4 horsemen on each team, and the field is about 300 yards long. And you basically fight over a dead goat, and the goat has to weigh at least 72 pounds. And so you reach down from your horse and grab a leg, and then try to run and throw it in the other team's goal, and they try to prevent you from doing that any way possible, basically.
I wonder why that isn't a popular game here.
You know, I've seen it now that
really,
I've seen it on TV.
Yeah. It's played all over Central Asia, sort of different iterations of it, and it's a very old game. We were told that it was, the earliest recorded history of it is like 3,000 years old, rock carvings of it. So it's been over there for a while. It's certainly popular with those people. It was quite an international experience for us. And requires a lot of horsemanship. That's for sure.
What drew you to that? What got you into that, Will?
Well, I like to do fun stuff with horses, and I have this idea that for my next book, I could write about the Silk Road in Central Asia, where horses were first domesticated, and where the relationship between horses and humans is still very organic compared to a lot of other places in the world. And they certainly love cowboys over there.
Interesting.
And so this game, one thing led to another, and I was invited to join. And so that's my original motivation was that I just wanted more experience and contacts in this part of the world if I thought I could write a book about it.
You were inspired to write a book and then were filling in the gaps.
That's right.
So these horses that play the game, what type of horses are they and how would they compare? What did you ride as an American?
I rode a big bay horse that so first of all, they're all stallions. All the horses are stallions. And there's guys that play offense and guys that play defense. And the guys that play offense try to grab the goat and throw it in the goal. And the guys that play defense try to physically block the other horses with their horse. So the defensive horses are bigger horses.
Sure.
They're big horses. They'll have some pretty big bone pedigree there. And then the horses to pick up the goat can be a little shorter so that it's easier to grab the goat. And they're all basically diffused from breeds of that area. A lot of it comes from like the Russian, the steppes of Russia and Kazakhstan are home to a lot of different sizes and shapes of horses. And then the mountains of Kyrgyzstan are sort of smaller horses, mountain type horses. And they've really bred the horses for this game. It's a wildly popular game over there. And so the horses are very well thought of and sort of, they curated for the game.
How many on a team?
He said 4.
4.
Well, 12 guys on a team, and you shift on the fly.
Okay.
And the game lasts an hour. And let me tell you, after an hour of this business, you've had enough.
So when you say you shift on the fly, that's from offense to defense. So different.
No, that's from guys on the sidelines.
Oh,
so that you're
okay.
out on the field for like 2 to 3 minutes, and then you get off the field.
What size field is it? Like a football field or bigger?
It's 300 yards long.
And how wide is?
It's about, I would have to look, but it's wide enough so that horses at the full gallop. I mean, a lot of the game is played at full speed, so it's big enough to allow the horses. It's bigger than a football field, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, having a good horse has got to be one of the requisites, I would think.
They were such good horses, boy, and so strong. Really good horses.
Well, we probably better talk about Pony Express, and this is so interesting. You get Alan and me going on wild games, fighting over goats. You can't leave that alone. Can you maybe just, I think most people know the Pony Express. I think a lot of people, myself included, when I found out, is surprised by because of the movement of history and technology, so to speak, at the time. It really didn't last that long. Can you just give us kind of a outline of the Pony Express?
Sure. So the Pony Express was a letter mail delivery service between Missouri and California in 1860. California was the only state west of the Missouri River, west of Missouri. And the Pony Express was an effort to provide expedited communication of letters only. And the existing time for mail delivery to San Francisco was 3 to 4 weeks, like 23 days to 30 days, just depending on weather and delays. Pony Express did it in 10 days. And it went a straight shot from St. Joseph, Missouri, which is just north of Kansas City, to Sacramento. And it was a fast horse relay. And so what this means is that one rider would cover 15, 20 miles on a horse, get off the tired horse, get on a fresh horse, transfer the mail bags, and cover about 100 miles in 8 hours. And then it would switch over to the next rider who would do the same thing. And in this way, they could cover the 2,000 miles between Missouri and California in 10 days. And it cost about the equivalent. It was $5 for one letter in 1860. And that's about $160 today. So this is pretty expensive way to send a letter. And there's surviving envelopes, a lot of surviving envelopes. And they show that the senders and the recipients are politicians, bankers, merchants. This is not like personal correspondence so much, because of the high cost. And so the Pony Express launched in April 1860, right before the Civil War. And it was very expensive to operate because so much of the country between Missouri and California, there was no existing infrastructure, or very little existing infrastructure in the way of the way stations, places where the riders would change horses. And there weren't too many horses out there. And so they put together 190 stations. And by my thinking, each station had to have at least a half a dozen horses to make this, because it was a twice weekly service in both directions, leaving Monday and Thursday from Missouri, leaving Monday and Thursday from Sacramento, headed west or headed east. So this is quite a lot of horse mobilization. Very expensive to operate, and it only lasted for 18 months. And the reason is because it was too expensive. And the Transcontinental Telegraph was completed in late October 1861, and the Pony Express closed down 2 days later.
Well, and
so
then
it really
that
Sorry,
also
go ahead.
kind of interacted with when they put the first railroad through, too, didn't it? Right within a year or two of that.
Yeah, so the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1867. And so, yeah, and it varied a little bit. They made improvements to the route, the Union Pacific did, because they saw the railroad could go a little farther without water and hay, basically. So they changed the route a little bit, but the Pony Express was certainly part of the mapping, mapping the economic potential of the American West, and communication and transportation and the conveyance of freight and passengers, was all to sort of follow in the footsteps of the Pony Express.
Did they make any money with the Pony Express, or did it go broke, or
it went broke?
Okay,
it went.
That's what I was leading to.
Yeah, it went so broke. In fact, it would have closed down earlier, except for there was a Postal Service contract with the operators of the Pony Express that they had to keep it running until the completion of the telegraph. And so people ask, why did the Pony Express go out of business? But really, the question should be, why was it able to even operate? And it operated at a significant loss. It was a financial ruin for the guys that put it on. And it burned up, they say, $5 for every $1 that it earned.
Did they know they were in a losing proposition when they got into it, and they were just buying some time, or what was the motive on that?
Right. It was three guys, Russell, Majors, and Waddell, and two of the guys thought that it wouldn't pay. But before they started it, two of the guys thought they wouldn't pay. The other guy said, well, I've kind of given my word to a senator from California that this is going to happen. And so they said, well, all right, let's try it, because they knew that there was a $1 million postal contract coming up the following year for transcontinental mail, and a weekly transcontinental mail. And so the Pony Express operators thought that if they could put this 10-day mail service, into operation, that it would prove to the Postmaster General that no one else was more suited to the job. So they thought that it would pay by securing that future contract.
That's a reasonable reason to do it. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that get started with the realization they're going to lose money, but there's a pot of gold out beyond the hills somewhere. But did it ruin these three guys, or were they able to insulate themselves and keep going with other?
It ruined them.
It did.
It ruined them. Each of them was in pretty good shape before they got tied up with the Pony Express.
So what drove you to follow that trail?
A couple of things. On a personal level, I wanted to fill in the map of the American West for myself. I consider myself a Westerner, active participant in our Western culture. And I still didn't know who lived in Western Nebraska or the middle of Nevada or all these places along the way. And I wanted to, I thought that I could inform my own sense of identity by some end-to-end look at the West. And I had an idea that I could write a book about it. I wanted to write a book about the West, from one side to the other. And I've been a horseman all my life. I've always loved horses. I've always loved to do things with them. And so the Pony Express emerged as sort of an avenue where all this was at a confluence. So I thought if I can just horseback it across the West on the Pony Express Trail, certainly I'll learn something about the history of the West, which will inform my perception of it, and maybe make a good story at the same time.
Well, and on that, we're going to take a quick break. We've already gone long, but it's really interesting, from goat competitions to riding 2,000 miles. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Russell and Ellen, and thank you, Will. We always have some incredible stories right here on the Cowboy Up Podcast. My name is Stan Houston. I'm one of the founders and producers of this program, and we thank you for your faithful support. We now have listeners all over the world, and thank you for being a part of a wonderful experiment that has been a true radio success. Well, recently we had Stuart Rosebrook on, and he told us about the Western way of life that is expressed in True West magazine, and the magazine that came out in October, right now, and it is about Tombstone. First of all, it's a celebration of the success of the film. It's been 30 years. Obviously, October was when that event happened. And, of course, the magazine covered not only that present-day film story, it also talked about some of the history of the Tombstone event itself. And when we first started this program, one of our desires was that we would eventually have more programs of the Western cowboy spirit. Well, I've got good news. Tales of Old Tombstone is coming. Welcome to Tales of Old Tombstone. Every week we'll take you back to the Old West of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, the cowboys and the dance hall girls. When miners paid in gold dust, every man wore a 6-gun, and a new bonanza was hopefully on everybody's horizon. And hosted by Western historian Stuart Rosebrook, along with co-host, that's right, Dude Ranch entrepreneur Russell True. Each week they will light a virtual campfire and then share stories with their guests about their Western heroes and heroines, favorite Old West destinations, and the best frontier hotels, bars, and restaurants still celebrating our glorious Western past. And, of course, we'll always be talking about the town that wouldn't die, Tombstone, Arizona. Well, this program will be coming your way soon, so keep looking for it. And now, back to this program.
Well, I think you had 2 horses, and you had to find the right ones to do this, and maybe talk a bit about the horses and how you selected them, etc.
Sure. So I went through quite a few. I looked at quite a few horses. I owned 2 horses at the time. Both were quarter horses, and one was a lazy gelding, and the other was just too green. She was 3 years old, and you can't subject a green horse to this kind of work. So I just jingled my horse network and looked at all the websites, etc. And the 2 horses I settled on turned out to be great for it. They're still sound, and we still ride them today. And one was a horse named Chicken Fry, and Chicken Fry was born in northern Mexico, the state of Chihuahua. And he was owned by a sure enough cowboy who'd done a lot of day hire work in West Texas and East New Mexico. And he told me, he said, if I was going to do what you're going to do, there's 2 horses I'd use. One is dead. The other is Chicken Fry. So I went and rode Chicken Fry in San Angelo, Texas. And two things struck me, or a couple of things struck me about the horse. One, he walked fast, long on the ground, like a cowboy would say. You know, he walked like a ranch horse should walk. Two, he was very intelligent. I could tell that the horse was pretty smart. And three, he was sensitive. He wasn't the kind of horse that just plows through sagebrush in front of him or you know, he was careful. He was a careful horse. And these seemed like qualities that they might come in handy, you know, having to traverse the country we were traversing. And so I bought Chicken Fry. And then the second horse was, I named him Badger. And he's a performance bred quarter horse. He's a grandson of Rowdy Yankee. And he'd been foaled in Oregon. He'd been trained in Nevada, and I bought him off a woman in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And this horse, he had a big motor. You know, he really idled at a high RPM. He felt like he could eat up that country. You know, when you drop the reins and let this horse walk out, he sure enough covered that ground.
Boy, that's a good feeling when you're on a horse like that and you can just turn him loose and he'll travel. That is.
Yep. And he starts swinging his head.
Yeah.
Yep. They start swinging their head from side to side and get that long walk. And he was also sensitive. And so I paired him up and started acquainting him with the routine of the packs and everything else.
So the cover of your book has a bay and a buckskin, it looks like. And
that's right.
Which is which?
The bay horse is Badger, and Chicken Fry is the buckskin horse.
And I can't remember. Did you rotate them from riding and packing? I rotated them.
You know, my original plan was to rotate them every day. But so we left St. Joseph, Missouri on May 5th. And by the time, after about 5 weeks, these horses were pretty fit. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
they got stronger as you rode them, huh?
They certainly did. They looked so good that I was afraid to, you know, somebody might steal them.
Wow. How many miles a day did you plan?
I planned for 20 to 25.
That's a day's travel. And what pace would you go? What were at a trot or a walk?
No, I walked them every step of the way.
Okay.
And we would travel. You know, those horses could walk at about 3.8 to 4 miles an hour. But because of just delays for one thing or another, we made an average of 3 miles per hour. So I could cover my day in 8 hours of riding, you know. And then I'd try to ride 4 days and then rest the fifth. And so by the time we got to central Nebraska, these horses were looking really good and they were very fit, and their backs had changed because they lost all that fat. And so the pack saddle didn't really fit my bay horse anymore. He's got withers like a thoroughbred, kind of good withers on that horse, but the pack saddle didn't really fit him. And so Chicken Fry became the pack horse. And one thing I came to know is that the pack horse has to make a lot of decisions about where to put his feet. You know, with your saddle horse, you can move them left and right pretty easy. In like navigating, you know, like just tricky areas. You know, I was riding through towns and stuff, you know, construction sites along the sides of highways and stuff. And that pack horse makes a lot of decisions on his own. And it became very important that he was, you know, with the program, not just plodding along with his eyes closed. So Chicken Fry became the pack horse.
And you said the man who sold you Chicken Fry said that he was good at decision making, so that played out the way it was told to you.
Absolutely, 100%. That's right.
So did you have to push them, or did they hit a pace that was easy for everybody?
Well, you know, 142 days is a long time riding. I had to push them every now and then.
Okay.
You know.
I would expect so.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
So 2,000 miles a long way, a lot of open country. You said you next to highways and construction, and so you probably ran the gamut in terms of what you encountered. What sort of dangers did you face?
A lot of danger came in a lot of different ways. You know, being on the side of a 75-mile-an-hour highway with 2 horses in a rainstorm can be pretty.
That's dangerous just to describe it.
It's dangerous. That's right. Super dangerous. You really got to be paying attention. You know, it was dangerous sneaking around cattle guards where there was no gate or something on a county road, you know. But in Utah, on the border in western Utah and in Nevada, I dealt with wild horses. And wild horses, when you're out there in the middle of that desert alone and you got a pack horse and a saddle horse and you got a young stud that runs up to you looking to harass your horses, this is pretty ticklish situation.
Were you riding geldings, mares, what?
Geldings, both geldings.
Both geldings. Okay. So the stud would come up and want to run you off of his territory.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or he was just, I don't know what exactly he wanted, but he was looking to investigate, and I would throw rocks at him. When I'd see him coming, I'd get off because I didn't want some kind of situation where my pack horse is helicoptering around me, you know, wrapping us up, and then I could lose my horse. So I'd get off.
And get a handful of rocks.
Yep, and then
Really?
I'd start throwing rocks.
And that was pretty effective, I guess.
Yeah, we made it. Yeah, we made it. But you know, you're
I'm
out there alone.
Well, I'm envisioning one of those scenes.
Not too fun, you know.
How many times that happened?
It happened a couple of times, but one time at a place called Simpson Springs, Utah. It's like 60 miles west of Salt Lake. You can drive out there and see this herd of wild horses. There were like 450 of them in the herd when I passed through there. And people go out there it's like a tourist day from Salt Lake. And so that was the worst. I had this roan stud come up and circle around me about 4 times. And I thought, boy, if I were running the Pony Express, this horse would be one I'd take, you know, because big, good looking horse, big, stout horse. But that was the closest. And generally when I threw rocks at them, they'd take off, you know, and the mares and babies didn't want anything to do with me, but the studs were a little bit more inquisitive, and the worst ones were the bachelor studs, the ones without mares.
Yeah, that was my bet. That I was guessing that's what you were dealing with. And of course, we got Alan here, who, of course, had the Mustang Meadows Ranch, and so he's got unique experience with Mustangs, but didn't have them coming at him. They were his friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had big herds of horses, and they will surprise you sometimes with what they do.
Yep.
So there's a Pony Express Museum in Julesburg, Colorado. Did you go there?
I dipped into Julesburg, but I didn't hit the museum because I was on horseback, and it was like 4 miles on the other side of the interstate, and I figured that there'd be another time for me to pass through there, you know. So I didn't go to that museum.
But it's there, so if anybody, and of course, they should have something. They should have your books there before.
That's right.
Were you mostly riding alongside roads, or were you out through pastures, or a little of both?
Until, you know, along the eastern half of the trail. So until I hit Casper, Wyoming, I was a lot of times on county roads and beside highways and stuff, because a lot of that country, there's a lot of private land out there, and it's just been cut up so much that I was forced to ride on county roads. I'd find the quietest roads possible. But once I hit, you know, the big tracts of BLM land, it was a lot nicer pace, and it was quieter, and I was out in some nice open country.
And you know, you mentioned Casper, and of course my family's mostly from Casper, so I know that area. But you've got a really nice hand-drawn map in the book, and it shows the start at St. Joseph and the finish in Sacramento, and it shows a little hand drawing of the saddle, kind of because it's a unique saddle and that they used, and so it really is one of the features of the book, along with really great color photos. We were all surprised to see the color photos. Just a really nice book, but you know, it does show that map. I guess my next question is, other than the Mustang Stallions, was that your biggest challenge, or were there even worse?
There were 2 other big challenges. One was the logistics of finding suitable campsite every 20 miles across the West. This is pretty tough, 20, 25 miles. And, I could look at satellite images. I could find landowner information. And I made a lot of phone calls, right, for people ahead of me. So I'd plan out, the 2 weeks in advance kind of is what I tried to do. And this was an unending chore. Just unending. The tabulation of the mileage in my journal is like the biggest entries,
Well, what would the conversation be like? You'd phone somebody out ahead that you never had met before and say, hey, I'm going to be packing through your area. Could I camp out in your front yard? Or what would you say to them?
That's it. I'd say, my name is Will Grant, and I'm horsebacking it across the West. And I left St. Joseph 2 months ago, and I was wondering if it might be possible for me to camp in your yard or your corral or your pasture with 2 horses. I got an electric fence. I won't be any trouble to you, and I'll be out of there before dawn tomorrow morning.
How many people told you yes, and how many people told you to go to hell?
Only one person. This was a big point. This is something we should talk about, or I'd like to mention, but only one outfit told me I couldn't camp there, and it was outside Bridgeport, Nebraska, and they said that their insurance wouldn't cover me camping on their land.
Baloney. Not your story is true, but that.
That was a new one on me. And
Yeah.
This gal said there's some public land, 2 miles west of us that you could probably camp at.
But you said you wanted to talk about that.
But consistently people were so hospitable and so supportive of what I was doing and so happy to let me sleep in the yard or whatever. It was really encouraging. And I think part of it was because I had 2 horses with me and people cared about the horses. In the West, we value animals like this. Yeah, and you could see it. I'd camp at someone's house, be out of there, and then, middle of the next day, I'd be riding along the county road, and here they come in a pickup with a plastic sack with like 2 ham sandwiches, some, a Snickers bar and a bottle of water in there, just to make sure I was doing
How cool is that? Yeah.
It was so cool. People were so welcoming and so nice to me and so hospitable.
Would you buy a bale of hay from them, or would they just say, hey, I got extra hay, grab some out of the barn, or how would that work?
No. Let me tell you, I felt that manners and being a good guest was critical.
Yeah.
Ability to cross the West. I always offered to pay them if I could give them some cash. Happy to buy a bale of hay, whatever, anything I could help out. If I got there, I always tried to arrive at camp by 3 p.m, which gave me plenty of time before dark if something went wrong. And I'd always try to help. If I saw somebody digging post holes, I'd put up my horses and go help.
So what were you feeding them if you got out into some, or did you not get into some remote stretches where grazing was the only
I got
option?
into some. One thing is 2019 was a really wet year. That's when I did the trip, and I had an electric fence. There was a single strand of rope, 3/8-inch rope,
Right.
with aluminum wires braided in it, and it was 60 foot by 60 foot. So I could throw up this fence over a creek by a tank, so they grazed for a lot of it.
You didn't hobble them or anything. You just would put them in your 60-foot enclosure.
I would hobble them when I got off. I used a 6-foot section of cotton rope, and each horse carried it around his neck. And when I got to camp, I would get off the horses, tie up the reins to the saddle horn, hobble them both, and then throw up that fence around them as soon as I could, because the last thing you want to do is lose your horses. But to the desert west of Salt Lake City, I hired a 17-year-old Mormon boy to drop hay and water at 6 locations between there and the Nevada state line. Oh. Because that's some harsh desert out there,
It is.
There's no water. And he would drop a 3-strand bale of grass alfalfa mix and 90 gallons of water, 3 30-gallon mineral tubs full of water. And let me tell you, in the next morning, there'd be like 2 inches of water left. All that. They drank all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's crossing the desert in August is nothing to sneeze at,
you don't realize how much a horse will drink, unless you have to measure it out.
Yeah, that's right. And if you Google it, it'll tell you 10 gallons a day for a horse.
They
But
will, and that's not enough.
country.
Yeah.
That's not enough. No, sir.
So, Will, I think, this is everything you've described about your experience with the people and the hospitality of the West. And we talk a lot about that in dude ranching, and we think it's unique. Along those lines, has your perception of the Old West, Wild West, New West, all that, did you leave your experience with what you expected, or did your views on all that change?
My views on it, I wouldn't say it all changed. I would say it was enhanced. There's certain things in the West that are going to be really difficult problems to solve, like cheatgrass. What are we going to do about cheatgrass? This is a big one. There's places that are just running out of water. There's a lot of that was sort of enhanced. In central Nevada they're pumping out groundwater, irrigate hay bales or irrigate alfalfa fields, and then they cut those bales in half, large square bales. They cut them in half with a chainsaw, pack them in a shipping container, and send them to South Korea and Japan for racehorses out of central Nevada. This is hard to make sense of all this. But there was generally nothing changed. It was just, it just enhanced my perspective on it, on what the Pony Express means, sort of how we identify with it, and sort of what makes us Westerners. What can you point at and say, by golly, that is of and from the American West?
When you were done, did you think this was a dumb idea, the Pony Express, or did you think, pin a blue ribbon on them for doing what they did?
It's interesting. I don't know. I'm certainly glad for what I did. My journey was certainly, changed my, changed the way I think about the West forever, informed it more. The Pony Express is just hard to know. I mean, what an episode in our Western heritage. 18 months and no one ever forgot it.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me. It was such a short period of time, and yet it occupies a lot of our history. It's a bigger stretch of history than what the time would dictate.
Well, I
cast
think
a very long shadow.
Well, I good for them. FedEx of 1860. Thank goodness they did it. It's last. Well, we got to finish up. How did it feel when you rode up to the bronze statue?
I'll tell you, it was the biggest relief of my life. I mean, the fact that I didn't have to worry about the horse's safety or plan any more campsites was just such a feeling of relief. Finally the horses were finished. That was the main, riding across the West is like the biggest babysitting job of your life, keeping these horses safe, making sure they're well fed and everything. And when we got to that bronze statue in Sacramento, I thought, man, I'm just so happy that we made it through in one piece, and I'm just so happy that I don't have to figure out where we're going next.
How did that trip change your life?
Well, I'm less likely to complain about the weather now. I really value being able to ride a horse for 45 minutes or an hour and a half at the end of the day and just take it easy,
I can really bet that's true. Well, we can't recommend The Last Ride of the Pony Express, Will Grant's book, enough. And it's a big publisher, so I assume it's available everywhere. Will, I mean, it's
available everywhere. Yes, sir.
And you've got do you have any website information you'd like us to pass along?
Well, my website is willgrantofthewest.com, but it'll be live any day now.
Yeah. Well, they'll just have to be a little bit patient. WillGrantofthewest.com. And
do you have another book in process?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to come up with a book about the Silk Road and the domestication of horses and how much they love cowboys in Central Asia. And I'd like to do a trip over there and write, about what that has to offer to us in our understanding of the horse-human relationship.
Well, it's a perfect next book. We'll look forward to that. And thank you for being with us. This was super. And come to Tucson and we'll ride for an hour or so.
That sounds great. It's been so much fun talking to you guys about this. I just, it's really my pleasure. So thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, Will.
Hello, my friends. Once again, this is Stan Houston, and from the White Stallion Ranch, where the Cowboy Up podcast is put together, produced, and sent your way. Hey, it's about time. Hard to believe September is gone. Now we're in the last quarter of 23. Again, where does the year go? Well, it's ready for the fall and winter time, and that's a good time for those of you who are saying, it's going to get kind of cold, and perhaps we ought to think about a little warmer, maybe western, southern vacation. Well, let's go to the Southwest and go to Tucson. A lot of the people who make their way regularly to this part of the world to have a little gentler weather, it's getting perfect. And it will be. And so you should think about make this family time a unique adventure, not just an experience, an adventure. So we encourage you very much to consider to kind of cultivate your inner cowboy, to learn some of those things about the Western way of life and kind of enjoy all of the activities from horseback riding to rifle shooting to e-biking to mountain climbing. It's a family experience, and why don't you bring the whole family? What a great way. Have a family reunion at White Stallion. So please reach out to us. We will find a place for you that will work just perfect for you, your family, maybe your business adventure that you're going to have. We can help you. So go to whitestallion.com. That's whitestallion.com. And then look us up, talk to us, and plan your adventure right now. This is the time, and the time has come for you to do just that.
Alan, I was thinking about how Will Grant said, I really kind of appreciate just going out for an hour ride, and it took me to, I'm not a packer, and I've pretty studiously avoided packing just because of all my friends who do it and tell me all the horror stories. And I try and avoid those type of things. So my boys talked me into going on the Philmont Boy Scout Camp 2 weeks, that's 14 days, by the way, of packing and sleeping on the ground. And it was a great experience with the boys. And it was even better when I got home and I got to sink into my really extra comfortable bed. Every single night for weeks I go, thank goodness.
That's just your age talking.
I'll tell you what, it created perspective.
Hey, thanks for giving us a listen, and thank you to Stan Houston's production company for bringing these episodes to life. If your travels bring you to a Pony Express monument or museum, take a photo and send it to us. We'll post it on our social media. You'll find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And be sure to circle back next week for more interesting talk about the West. Until then, I'm Lynn Weezy Sneed, reminding you to sit tall and ride safe.